Hey guys, it's Genetic here, and I can't believe I finally get to say this. But after over a year of waiting, we're less than 24 hours away from the global launch of Persona 5 The Phantom X. Man, it feels good to get that off my chest. I've been waiting forever to say that, and now today's the day. And in today's video, I want to help you guys figure out which characters you should pull on the version 1.0 limited and beginner banners. First, we'll start with the Phantom Thieves of Hearts banner, also known as the beginner banner, because this is the first banner you'll have access to early on. You'll want to make sure you're certain you know who you want to pick for your account. On this banner, you get to pick between Morgana, codename Mona, An, codename Panther, and Ryuji, codename Skull. So let's cover the pros and cons of each character. Alright, so starting us off, the first character we'll be covering on the beginner banner is Mona, also known as Morgana. So, Mona is a 5-star, non-limited wind healer that specializes in providing team-wide heals, making him a great option for any team regardless of where the player's account is at. So let's cover some of Morgana's strengths and weaknesses. So to start us off, he has a good source of healing, which is great to have on your team. Having a dedicated healer early on in the game is always a good start. Next, he has a revive. So if you've played Honkai Star Rail before, when the game first came out, there was really only one character who could revive. I think it was only just Bailu. So if you didn't have her, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but if you did have a Bailu to start off your game, it made some of the in-game content less challenging. To be honest, story-based content, you really won't need a revive for the most part. It's not too crazy to where you're going to have to bring back characters all the time. But for in-game, sometimes you might have a situation where you might need an emergency revive. You might have made a wrong move and you need to bring somebody back, so that's really helpful. And lastly, he can provide a cleanse, so he can clear one of those status debuffs, which can be really helpful. I'm going to tell you right now, again, I'm Honkai Star Rail guy, so I'll keep kind of comparing it with Honkai Star Rail, having status effects on you. Being able to cleanse them with your healer is super strong, because you can get some crazy effects on you, but being able to clear those is really good. So here's some of his weaknesses. First off, his revival is only limited to one ally per highlight. So in one sequence of combat, he can only revive one time, which it makes sense. You know, you don't want him to be too busted, having multiple revives in the same fight. That makes sense. That's fair. His cleanse is limited to one ally. This is kind of one of the bigger outliers in his weaknesses, where it's like, okay, this isn't too great, because at the end of the day, you might get multiple status effects on your entire team, and that's kind of a big weakness, to not be able to clear more than one of your allies at the same time in terms of the cleanse. It's not the worst thing ever, but it definitely is the glaring negative in the weaknesses that he has. And he also lacks a utility buff, which that's not too crazy, but you know, if you're looking for that, then he might not be your guy. To add on to the overview, here's some more things that you might want to consider before pulling and getting Mona. So one of the things you look at is his notable awareness. So awareness, for those who don't know, is basically another way of saying character copies. So if you've played Star Rail, you have heard of Eidolons before. And if you haven't heard of any of this, I actually made a comparison video. If you played Star Rail and you don't know any of the terms for Persona 5X, go check out my Persona 5X Gacha full breakdown video. Put that in the link down below. But if you don't know, I'll try and explain it now if you don't have the time to watch that. So notable awareness is just, if I pull the character again, I will get an additional copy of that character. So at A3, that means I have 3 extra copies of Morgana. So at A3, A5, and A6, he'll get some buffs for his character. That's pretty good. And then his skill rotation is going to be using skill number 3 and then into skill number 1. Or you can just use skill number 2 for emergency healing. And that's basically the full breakdown for Mona or Morgana. Next up, we have who I believe is the best character choice for the beginner banner, who's Panther, also known as An. So Panther is a 5-star non-limited DPS that specializes in dealing high fire damage to all enemies. Panther has a relatively simple playstyle and can be used in cheap, free-to-play comps, making her quite good for new players. Here are the strengths and weaknesses for Panther. Number 1, she's easy to set up, which is great news. going in as a new player, you really don't want to spend a bunch of time grinding ascension materials and looking for the best relics to get the best stats on your character. So to be able to just go in, build the character very quickly, and use her in your comp is a great strength. Next, she has cheap comps, which means that she can work well with almost any 4-star characters in the game. Let me tell you, that's great news, because a lot of the time you won't be getting the 5-star characters anyways, because you spend a lot of gems and resources trying to get those better characters. So to be able to use a cheap comp means you won't have to really spend anything to be able to make her usable on her account and strong on your account with a good team. And next, she has great damage. If you played the Persona games, you know she's already strong, but it's good to hear that that stays the same here in Persona 5 The Phantom X. Having great damage, having all those other weak strengths as well, she's going to be probably the #1 choice for that beginner banner. And her weakness is really only one, which is that she's bad against single target enemies. So if you're using her, just make sure you're aware of that. You might not be able to use her for that, but you can definitely use her teammates to focus on those multi-targets. So Ann's notable awareness is at A3 and A6. And her skill rotation is just going to be skill 1 until concentration. Then you go into skill number 3. Not too complicated. And lastly, we have Skull. Skull is a 5-star non-limited DPS that specializes in dealing massive physical damage to target enemies. Skull is a bit tricky to use early on, but in the hand of an experienced player and with good investment, he can deal some crazy damage. Here are some of Skull's strengths and weaknesses. His first is that he has a 1-button setup, so really not going to be too complicated to use when it comes to his abilities, his skills. Next, he has extremely high damage, which is great. Obviously, you have to build him correctly, which means that you're probably going to be spending some time looking for his relics that give him the best stats, but once you build him correctly, he's going to be one of those big damage dealers. And lastly, his main skill is guaranteed to be a crit, which is great. Having, especially if you're one of those guys who's going to be playing a lot of in-game, having guaranteed crit is always a massive strength. Just knowing that you're getting something guaranteed in a gacha game, let me tell you, is probably already a massive strength. And here's his weaknesses. First, he has backloaded damage, which it's not the craziest weakness, but it definitely isn't the best. He has restrictive teammates. This is kind of the big weakness, honestly, which means that you're probably going to have to be spending on banners to get characters as you need to work with him, which always sucks because that means that you're going to not maybe be able to pull on a character you want later down the line because you're forced to pull for him and the characters and team that he needs to build around him. And he lacks BIS teammates early in the game's lifespan. So he's going to have some issues really keeping up with, in my opinion, Mona or An early on. However, I'd say he's one of those guys, if you want to play and you love him, he'll be a great investment down the line. And for those of you who don't care that much about the pros and cons of a character and just want the tier list, here you guys go. So if we go here, this is pridewin.gg. If you don't know who they are, they make tier lists and make tons of informative content for all of these different gacha titles. I know I've been using them for a long time with Honkai Star and Zenless Zone Zero, but they've made a new website here for Persona 5 The Phantom X. So you can see here where those starter beginner units are ranked. So here, T0 is going to be your top units. You can see Joker's up there. We'll talk about him later. But for the starter banner units, you can see An is right here at tier 0.5. So she's really the best in pretty much every category for global for a free unit. And Morgana is right here, pretty much right next to her. But she's going to be at the top of that list. He's not going to be as good in that general, but this is more of a CN if you see later on, because CN is a bit further down, so they kind of have two different tier lists. But at least at launch, the only thing he's not going to be great at is bossing. Again, Morgana, more of a healer, and An is more of a damage dealer. So it makes sense why she's going to be better in those in-game bosses. And we have to go down just a bit to tier number 1 to find Ryuji, who's really not the best at general stuff, but he's a bit better at that bossing, because again, he's known for his big damage. So if you build him correctly, he's going to be really, really strong. And even now, he's still tier 1 in CN for bossing, which is great. So you can see you really can't go wrong with any of these characters. They're all very highly ranked. However, if you're looking just at the tier list for who's the most powerful and ranked the highest, it's going to be on at the top. So now that you guys have all gotten a better look at the beginner banner, let's transition into the limited banner for 1.0. To start us off, we have Joker's banner, which actually looks like it's going to last all from 1.0 through 1.1. So it's going to be there for at least a month. You're going to have a lot of time to decide if you want to pull on him or not. And let's break down Joker now and see if he's the right character for you. Joker is the first limited DPS in the game that specializes in a unique mechanic called Extra Turn, allowing Joker to deal more damage during his turn. He's a great early game unit, especially against low HP mobs, but his weaknesses do show in in-game content that doesn't provide low HP mobs. As such, he's kind of a mixed bag, and this is what you come to expect with gacha games. The first unit, obviously the big name, Joker. Everyone wants to get Joker, but he's one of those guys I can see down the road being power crept because he isn't the strongest in in-game content. For now, though, he's the first 5-star limited DPS. He does the most damage by far, and he's going to probably be the best unit in the game at launch. You can't go wrong with Joker. Here are some of the strengths and weaknesses for Joker. First things first, for his strengths. He's easy to set up and has flexible comps. And let me tell you, if the first 5-star DPS coming out in any gacha game is easy to set up and is flexible comps, they're probably going to be at the top of any tier list. So basically what this means is that he's going to be very easy to build. You're not going to have to spend too much time on getting the best relic stats to make him work well, or getting the materials you need to build the team around him. You just put him on a team, any team, and he's going to deal the damage you need and fulfill the role you want him to fulfill. And with the flexible comps, this just means you're not going to have to spend that many gems on other banners to get the 4 stars you need, or anything else, which is great, because that means that once you spend to get Joker, you don't have to keep spending to get the characters that fit with them. He can also deal extra damage via the extra turn buff. His weaknesses are he's bad against single target enemies, he's reliant on low HP mobs to fill the extra turn buff, and he has poor skill multipliers outside of the extra turn. He reminds me a lot of Zila and Honkai Star Rail, who really struggled against single target DPS because to use her skill, which was to basically get another turn after she eliminated an enemy, she could go again. And that only could happen really if the enemy she was going against had low HP and they weren't strong mobs. But again, against larger and stronger bosses in the in-game, she struggled because there weren't a lot of low HP mobs and the characters had more and more HP, so she really couldn't do what she was designed to do, which was get another turn after eliminating a target, because it was only one target. So the Joker reminds me a lot of an earlier version of Zila at the release of Honkai Star Rail. And if you end up deciding to pull on Joker's banner down the line and you don't know how to build him, I'm going to put an image on screen for you right now. It's going to show the materials you need to build Joker, some of his best team options, and the best in slot weapons for Joker, from 5-star limited weapons to free-to-play 3-star weapons that you can use to get the most optimal Joker build. Now that we've taken a look at Joker individually, I thought it'd be a good time to look at Joker's banner as a whole. So there are other 4-stars that are also available on Joker's banners. Let's figure out who they are and where they're ranked. So we're going to go back to the good old tier list that we were using earlier thanks to Pridewin. And here you can see where some of the 4-stars on that banner are ranked. So up at the top we have Seiji Shiratori, and this is crazy. He's also a tier 0 DPS. So what this means is if you don't get Joker, it's not the end of the world. You also have a very good 4-star alternative that you can use if you don't even want to spend to get Joker. You never know. This is a really good alternative. In Sustain, you have Luful, a tier 0 healer, even above Morgana, which is one of the ones you could select earlier, right, in that beginner select. So let's say you don't pull for Morgana in the beginner select, you go for On, and then you get Luful in the Joker banner, then you get a lot of value from that.
And lastly, you have Tomoko Noge, who's down in tier 2. If you're pulling for a 4-star, I don't think she would be the option. However, it's still a support, and you know what I mean? She's not the worst support in the game, and she still works on a team if you want to support, just not at the tier 0 or tier point 5 category. And at the end of the day, it's just a tier list. You know what I mean? So you should pull for characters you want on your team, not just because the tier list says they're good or bad. Some of you may be asking, I know Joker's first, but who's next after Joker? Who's the next limited 5-star? And I can actually answer that question right now. Your next limited 5-star is going to be Miyu Sahara, and she's also tier 0, at least on this launch tier list, in the Navigator category. You can see she's fallen a lot in that CN, and that's kind of a good way to look at the power creep, to be honest. But for now, we can look at the review for her, and she's a Navigator that's mainly supports by giving the party shield and defensive buffs, which is a great thing to have on your team at launch. And she'll definitely be a very popular pick. Some people will skip Joker to get her because she'll have that defensive buff and that party shield, which will definitely be useful for that in-game content. Some of her pros and cons is she is the only Navigator that can provide sustain each turn. That is a massive W. For her cons, it takes a very long time to build up stacks of buffs, which isn't the worst thing in the world. And since she doesn't shield enough to act as your sole sustain, you'll still need to run a proper sustain character when necessary. This is kind of the bigger con, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to build a team, and especially for in-game content, when it's all about speed, right? You're gonna want more damage, and you're probably gonna want a character that's gonna damage and also either heal or shield, but having to have a sustain as well as a defensive character means you're gonna lose out on a lot of that damage that you're probably gonna want. So there's a mix of pros and cons, but at least at launch and for the tier list that you're looking at, she is at the top, and you can't go wrong with either Joker or Miyu, at least not at first. If you're looking at power creep, maybe you decide a bit differently. And guys, that's about it for this one. I hope you guys have a better understanding of who you feel like you're going to pull for in version 1.0 and even beyond, and especially on that beginner banner. I know I'm going to have a difficult time choosing between 3 of some of my favorite characters in the Persona series, so we'll figure it out when we get there, but that's about it, guys. And before you guys go, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and stop by tonight, twitch.tv/thatsgenetic with 2 C's on the end. I'll be live, and I'm going to be streaming Persona 5 The Phantom X on launch day, grinding all the new content. I'm super excited for the game's release. And don't forget, there also is a login bonus that'll be out when the game releases, so make sure you log in every day for 7 days. There's going to be standard banner free pulls and limited banner free pulls, so make sure you log in, grab those before they're gone so you can pull more and get the characters you're looking for. Alright guys, stay safe, have a good day, and woo, it's about to be a fun night, guys.